Well, hello and welcome to another edition of the March Madness Book Vlog. Today we're going to do things a little bit differently. We have a book lover here with us. This is Ashley.
Hello.
And she is going to be sharing some of her thoughts on one of her favorite books that was in the bracket, The Book Thief. And so we're just going to start out. I'm going to ask her some questions and she's going to share her thoughts with you. So let's just start out by saying, Ashley, what is it about this book that you really enjoyed?
Well, I really enjoyed looking how the main character saw World War II and how she slowly progressed and aged over the book. And I thought that that was really interesting, so that's probably my favorite feature of the book.
Okay.
And the narration was also very interesting.
Oh, yes, and we will talk about that in just a few seconds. You mentioned the characters in this book, or you mentioned one character in particular, Liesel, and we'll be talking, I'm sure, about her in a little bit. But there were lots of amazing characters in The Book Thief. Who were your favorite characters?
Well, my favorite character is definitely Liesel because she was just such an awesome young girl and she loved books just like me. So I found her
too.
Yeah. So I found her very easy to relate to. And then there's also Max, who I thought he was just an amazing character because he just had so much spirit and he managed to hide from the Nazis. So I just thought that he was such an awesome character.
And I really love the relationship between Liesel and Max,
Yeah.
and how it grew, and how much she cared about him and how much he cared about her. We can't go in too much detail because we don't want to give away any spoilers, but
Yeah.
that is a totally awesome relationship between those two
I liked
characters.
seeing how they progressed and became best friends. One of my favorite moments in the book was when they made a snowman together. That was so sweet.
Yes, that was incredible. And if you want to know how they made a snowman, you're going to have to read the book and find out.
Yeah, which I highly suggest doing.
So, what did you think about the narrator? And the reason I ask this question is because this narrator is a lot different than other narrators that you might be used to. And can you kind of give them a heads up about, why this narrator is so different?
I'd just like to say that I had no idea who the narrator was, but while I was first reading the book, it took me a few chapters to find out. But you'll notice that it says, when death has a story to tell, you listen. That's because the narrator is death. So I thought it was really interesting how they have death narrate the story of a young girl in Nazi Germany, but it was really cool to see how the author put that into play.
Oh, it really was. And if you read the anniversary edition, he actually goes in and he talks about how he had rewritten that story several times. He had written it from the perspective of death first, because that was his first idea. He wanted death to tell the story. Then it seemed like it was just too, how shall we say, morbid with death. So then he went back and he had it from Liesel's perspective, a first-person narrator, and it just didn't seem quite right. So then he went back and he wrote it as a third person, and that didn't feel right, and so he ended up going back to death, and I really am glad that he did, because honestly, even though, death is is a morbid thought, the way he portrayed death wasn't eerie or even, I don't know, it just was a different way.
I found myself actually liking the narration, and I found out that I liked death, because when I first read it, I was like, oh wow, that is pretty morbid. But then, as the story progressed on, as we saw more of the narration, I started to like death a bit more. So it was definitely a very interesting choice for narration.
Very.
And I don't think anybody could quite pull it off as well.
I don't think so either. So let's rate this book now. You've read lots of books. Ashley has read like tons of books. And
If you sit next to me in class, then you can definitely vouch for me.
So we're going to ask her a very tough question. Thinking about all the books that you have read, if you were to rate The Book Thief on a scale of 1 to 10, what rating would you give it?
I would give it a 9.5.
9.5. Tell us why 9.5, which is pretty high.
Well, definitely 9.5 because people will tell you that the ending is surprising, but it honestly isn't that surprising. And plus, it's just such an unknown book that you don't really, the ending is surprising, except it's not surprising. And it can also be confusing if you don't know who the narrator is.
Right.
So that's why I give it a 9.5.
Okay. Which is very good. Very, very good. And I bet you're all dying to find out what her favorite book is. She's not going to tell you today. You'll have to.
That's because I don't have one.
I have bunches of favorite books, I do. But it was, actually, The Book Thief is probably one of my top reads. I would have to put it on
Yeah,
my
I
top
would.
reads.
It's definitely one of my favorite books, and that's saying a lot because, like I said, if you sit next to me in class, you know how many books I read.
Okay, another question. We're getting ready to wrap this up. Did this book, do you think, do a good job depicting the time period of the Holocaust? I mean, there are lots of books that do it. There are movies that do it. What was your take on that in relation to the Holocaust?
Well, it was definitely very interesting because you saw the Holocaust from a German girl's point of view and how she went to like Hitler Youth meetings and stuff.
Yeah.
So I found that really interesting because you don't find a lot of books out there that are like that because they're mostly just about Holocaust survivors' point of views and Jews who have survived concentration camps.
Right.
So I thought that it did accurately depict the Holocaust from how a different person would see it. So, I mean, we didn't really get to see what was happening in concentration camps, but the main character did know that it was wrong and stuff. So that's another reason why I'd give it a 9.5. The main character, I think, wasn't German enough.
And you know, there was a point, you mentioned about the concentration camps. There is a point, even though you don't see the camps, you see the march
Yeah.
to the camps. And there's a couple of times that happens. And some of those, there's a really poignant time with Max, the main character. Well, one of the main characters in the book,
Yes.
which we won't tell you about. But I mean, it's because you got to read it to find out. We can't tell you everything, but a very touching scene with that.
Yeah.
Last question, and this is probably the most important one. Why should they read it?
Well, you should definitely read this book because it is just really good. Like for me, I could not keep my hands off of it. I just kept reading it. And it was just such a good book, and it shows you how Germans saw the Holocaust. And it just had so many great details, and I liked how the story progressed and how the main characters progressed. And I also really like how relatable the main character was, as I said before, because she was able to just because I mean she obviously stole books if you couldn't tell from the title.
Yeah.
If you didn't know that was what the book is about, you probably shouldn't read the book, honestly. But I really liked how she just had such a passion for reading while war was going on. And I also really liked how interesting the narration was and just how the book was just fantastic in a whole. So I really highly suggest reading it.
And with that, we are going to close this edition of the March Madness book vlog. And we hope that you will tune back in later on this week for another book review. But in the meantime, get your hands on a copy of The Book Thief. You probably won't get your hands on a copy of one here in the library because it's checked out. But keep checking back and it'll come back through sometime or the other. But thank you, Ashley, for being with us today.
You're welcome.
And we hope to see her again in the very near future, giving us some more book recommendations.
You probably will.
Until then, take care and keep reading.
Please keep reading.
A lot, all the
Yeah.
time.